Thank you for an opportunity for my wife and me to join you in worship. It's always such a delight to be here. This is my fourth time. I think every time I say this because every time it's true, it feels kind of like coming into someone's home because it's always been January, early January when I come. And by then, you guys have spent, I don't know how many months, 4 months together. So you're family. And it just feels neat, like we've been invited into someone's home. I think this will work. Is this HDMI? What I'm going to do is switch between two computers. I'll start with this one, and then I'll go with that one, and then I'll come back to this one. So, don't allow. It's not always the best choice, but this time I decided to allow. We'll see what happens. Okay, I want to start, not with that. I want to start with this, just a little bit of introduction. This is every year I write Christmas letters to my family, and I have a picture. I send it to Shutterstock and have a picture on the front. This is the last one, so Christmas 25. That's our family. My wife Anita is right there. Delighted that she came this time. And so we have twin daughters, Caitlin and Noelle. They're both married. Caitlin is married to Jacob. They live in Washington, D.C. Noelle is married to Reagan. They live close to us in Irvine. And they had a baby in April. And so we are now, I know it looks implausible, but we are grandparents. And Walker is our grandson. I should mention our son, Ryan, is there. So Noelle graduated from Biola, 3-2 engineering physics, went to USC. She's now a rocket scientist, but more importantly, a mom. She works at NASA JPL. She's a literal rocket scientist, okay? Ryan is in his third year, junior year, studying accounting at Biola. And Anita and I both work at Biola. I teach in biology. Anita used to be with the Torrey Honors. Have you heard of Torrey Honors College? She was working with them for 2 years, and she's now with the business school, okay? And I think every year I've come here, I see some of the people from Joshua who end up at Biola, and that's a sweet thing. Most recently, Brooke, I forgot her last name, but yeah. Okay, so beautiful. We are delighted to be here, and we got here right before the dinner bell rang, by the way. This is an old picture. I think he was 11 days old. Walker was 11 days old when this picture was taken. There's a more recent picture of Walker. And we nailed. Do you ever give a young child a toy and it either doesn't go well or you nail it? We nailed it with the push-down car that scoots across the floor. He was just shrieking with joy watching that go. So that's Walker and Noelle, our daughter. I'll be able to tell you a little bit more about me if you grill me tomorrow morning. I'm not going to say a whole lot other than the Lord called me to a career in scientific apologetics. And it started by studying engineering. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I studied chemical engineering. And I was about 3 years into that and decided the one thing I don't want to do is chemical engineering. But it set me up to go to grad school. And by the time I was at grad school, I started, through prayer, really started to have clarity about what the Lord was calling me to. And he was calling me to a scientific critique of Darwin's theory. And so I ended up getting married. We got married during my PhD years. We both went to Cambridge. I did a postdoc there in Cambridge, became a molecular biologist. We actually bought a house in Cambridge, had our twin daughters in Cambridge. So we spent quite a bit of time in Cambridge, UK. As the Lord was opening doors, and sometimes he shut doors. There was kind of a critical moment where a door was closed. And it was sort of a crisis moment for me in my career. And I was on the ground crying and praying. And the Lord opened a door graciously. So that's what often happens. Lots of research, papers published. It led to an opportunity in 2016 for me to write a book with HarperCollins. And it's this book, Undeniable: How Biology Confirms Our Intuition That Life is Designed. I spent a lot of hard work writing this because I thought, here's an opportunity for me to lay out what I think the truth is with respect to the origins of living things, but in particular us, because we matter a lot, don't we, as humans? And if you get the story of what a human is wrong, you're going to mess up a whole lot. Okay, and we're going to talk about that over these next few days. Here's where I work in this beautiful new building. It's soon not to be the newest building. You guys are going to be on campus in March, is it? We have to make sure it's not spring break, because last time you came and we were all gone. Okay, so we'll be there. Okay, I hope to see you when you're there, because that's when you do the LA mission. Is the LA mission before Biola?
It is before.
Okay, so you can tell me about your LA mission. I will hope to see you when you're on campus. This is the building that I work in, and you'll see this when you're on campus. It's the science building, the LIM Center. I'm a professor of biology, but I also am a faculty advisor to this relatively new thing at Biola called the AI lab. And AI, yeah, everyone's trying to get a piece of it. But Biola in a different way, because most people are just trying to say, yeah, we do AI. Biola is recognizing that as a Christian university, we have a fairly unique calling to say helpful things about AI and healthy things about AI, because AI can be used for good and evil. It is being used for good and evil. You're probably aware of that. Like cheating on, no. It is being used for cheating, and we're both encountering that. There's lots of, even applications. So if you're applying for a job application or applying to a school, don't have ChatGPT write your essay, because it just stands out and everybody rejects the ChatGPT essays. But a bigger deal than that is, I think in this era of AI, we're being tempted, we humans are being tempted to get confused about what a human is and what a machine is, because for the first time, machines are doing things that we thought for the entire history of humanity a machine would never do, and now they are doing those things. So what does that mean? That we're machines? Does that mean machines are going to become like us? I'll unpack this and tell you what I think is true and scripturally correct, and a healthy way for us to view humans, and a healthy way for us to view AI. And from there, you can unpack a lot of the other thorny questions about AI. Is it going to displace people from certain jobs? Can you use it when you're trying to, write an essay? Those are smaller questions, but I think a big question is, what is a machine? What is a human? And are they profoundly different, such that a machine will never be a human? The answer to that sneak preview is yes, they are profoundly different, but we'll talk about that. So what I want to do then is I'll theme my 4 lectures according to this: of man and machine, recovering a Christian view of humanity. I didn't want to work AI into the title, because I think it's obvious today that one of the things that's encroaching on our view of humanity is AI, because machines are now having conversations with us. There are people who think they're having a relationship with a virtual, an agent. There's all kinds of things that are now respects in which machines are encroaching on our lives in a personal way that was not true a very short time ago, five years ago. And it requires us to sit back and ask this question and get a good answer to it, a Christian understanding. So here's the roadmap for the week. Today's Monday. I want to talk about materialism. I'll tell you what I mean by that. I don't mean, cyber trucks and, fancy clothes. I'll tell you what I mean. Materialism and 3 ways to refute it. Tomorrow will be the fantastic improbability of Darwin's story, his story of how we came to be. Wednesday, I want to talk about AI, why AI will never be like us. And then we'll finish on Thursday with, this is like it's very similar to a lecture I give to Biola students in my course that's like tons of pictures and just a wow. It's a wow lecture where you don't have to take notes, and I'm just going to stun you with what God has revealed to us through the way He has made living things. Okay, so today, materialism and 3 ways to refute it. And I think I want to here segue to these clips. So should I unplug here and then give you the...
Yeah.
And you're going to just do HDMI, or do you need the...
Yeah, I don't need the...
Okay. I want to give you 2 short clips of smart people talking about humanity in ways that are profoundly unhealthy and profoundly unchristian, but they're not stupid because they're smart people. So, and I want to talk about this because I want to unpack what's going on here, and I want us to have a lens from which to view this take on humanity. So let's do the, yeah, that's the Dawkins one first. Yeah, let's do Dawkins. We can pause that right there. Okay, so did you get that? An individual, that's us, is a throwaway survival machine for the coded information it contains. That's a view of humanity. He just gave you a view of you and me. You are a disposable, throwaway body whose purpose is to perpetuate DNA for tens of millions, or in some cases, hundreds of millions of years. That's a view of humanity. Now, I'm aware he's an atheist. Although, interestingly, he's recently saying that he is an atheist who lives by a Christian, what do you say, a Christian, he says he accepts a Christian worldview. I think he's very scared about what's happening in the UK right now. But he's an atheist. But that's his view of humanity. Now, I realize that most of us who have friends who are not Christians, and I hope most of us have friends who are not Christians, maybe all of us, or family members who are not Christians. In most cases, those people who are not Christians are not atheists. And in fact, I think atheists are fairly rare. And I think in your generation, they're even more rare than they were a generation before you. So the people that you know who are not, and we could do a survey, the people that you know who are not in the Lord are, maybe they're of a faith that's mixed up. Maybe they're Mormons, maybe they're Catholic and not serious about their Catholicism, not serious about Scripture. Maybe they're part of a Jehovah's Witness or something that we might call a cult. Maybe they're Muslim or Hindu, something like that. Not so many people are. In fact, raise your hand if you know someone who's about your age who calls himself or herself an atheist. Yeah, there's a few, and I knew quite a few actually. So I think it's more rare now than it was 25 years ago. So I think atheism is not a huge thing, but the reason I want to focus on this atheistic worldview is atheism makes a claim to science that most of these other worldviews do not claim. So people like Richard Dawkins will claim that science, getting the science right, is what turned him into an atheist. And that's kind of a scary thing if you think, because science is about truth. So the atheists are saying if you go and study the truth about the world out there, it will turn you into an atheist. Some of them are saying that, people like Richard Dawkins. That's why I think this worldview, even though it's not the most popular worldview, it requires special attention because it claims to have science as its founding. And that's not true, but it makes that claim. So I think it requires special treatment. Another smart guy, scientist, is Neil deGrasse Tyson. So let's look at this clip. You thought that was weird. Okay, we'll cut that. Now, I would beg to differ on that last line. What difference does it make? If you actually believed that you're a fictitious character in a simulation, might that have some profound implications for how you live your life? Surely it would. So it does matter. It does make a difference. These are 2 very smart people, and Larry King referenced another very smart and very rich person named Elon Musk, worth, I heard, $700 billion, which I think that's nuts. Elon Musk is worth $700 billion. He thinks this too. Apparently, seriously, Elon Musk thinks that we're living in a simulation, or he said that. And I've seen him say, I can't think of a good argument against that. Well, I'm going to give you this evening what I think is a very, very strong argument against both of these views, because both of these views are materialist views, okay? And here's what we mean by materialism. It's not if you're worth $700 billion and you buy too much, which you would if you're worth that. It's this definition of materialism, the belief that the physical universe is all that exists. It's also called physicalism. There isn't anything other than the material. It's this stuff and nothing else. So if you say, well, you might say, well, what about God? How would a materialist answer that? You say, well, what about God? How do you think Richard Dawkins would answer that? Or, well, we talk about God, so what would Dawkins say? Well, when you're talking about God, how we started talking about God was some sort of survival thing where religion became something that gave a survival advantage to certain cultures. You can send your guys off to war if you tell them that God told us to. He would say something like that. And so humans invented religion, we invented God, and humans are material things. So yeah, God exists only as something that we talk about, and we are as material as this log, right? So that's how materials think about things. Okay, I'm going to give you 3 short, because we've got to get 3 in one evening here. So we'll be done by 11:15. No, 3 short refutations of the materialist view of humanity. First is it doesn't meet the usual standard of a credible scientific hypothesis. The second is the materialist conception of humanity is incoherent. I'll show you what makes it incoherent. And the third is that the raw improbability of life by blind causes makes all such accounts implausible. Now, this sounds like a mouthful, but let me unpack these one at a time. Here's the first one. The materialist, well, I put BW there. That meant blind watchmaker, but I mean the materialist view of us doesn't meet the usual standard of a credible scientific hypothesis. Let me talk about another scientific hypothesis about the origin of something spectacular. The origin of galaxies and stars in the night sky. And by the way, when you're in Orange County, you don't see the night sky the way you do here. So as soon as we got out of our car, we're looking up and go, wow, you can see the stars here. So enjoy the stars when you're in a place that doesn't have light pollution. But where did stars come from? And where did galaxies come from? Well, it's a good question, and astrophysicists have an answer. They have a hypothesis. And probably most of these astrophysicists would say, well, we know where stars come from. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to show you why there's a very reasonable hypothesis about where stars came from. But if you say that stars form over periods of billions of years, why would it's a little bit arrogant for anyone to say, we know where stars come from, because nobody's been around, no human has been around for that long. Here are a series of facts, though, that I think justify a hypothesis about where stars and galaxies come from, and it is, in fact, the current hypothesis of astrophysics. Here's fact number 1. Hydrogen is the most abundant element in deep space. How do we know this? You can get a 21-centimeter radio signal from the electron spin flip of atomic hydrogen. Out in deep space, you don't have H2, which is diatomic hydrogen. You have H1 because it's so rarefied. There's so little hydrogen out there, but most of what's out there is hydrogen. Hydrogen is the most abundant element in deep space. There's not much of anything, but almost all of what's out there in deep space is hydrogen. Second fact, massive clouds of hydrogen, if they exceed a certain critical density, are expected to undergo gravitational compaction. This is how gravity works. Has anybody, if you had raise your hand if you had high school physics and you learned about how gravity works. Masses attract masses. So when you drop something that falls, if I drop something and it falls, why is it falling? Well, this has mass, and what else has mass? The Earth. So it's falling down because the Earth is a very large mass that's close by. So that's why things fall down. Massive clouds of hydrogen will have gravitational attraction. If they exceed a critical density, they'll actually compact upon themselves. And you start to compact hydrogen in those massive clouds. Under extreme compaction, hydrogen undergoes fusion. So this is a nuclear process to form helium. Hydrogen, if you get it compacted with enough pressure, it undergoes fusion to form helium. And this is a nuclear reaction. How do we know that this is true? Anybody know? What word could you put after hydrogen? Bomb. Hydrogen bomb is an example of humans making a device that causes such extreme compaction of hydrogen that it fuses to form helium and it's a bomb. The most powerful, the thermonuclear warheads, the most powerful warheads that exist are this. They are hydrogen bombs. Fourth observation, and this is obvious once we reference a hydrogen bomb, the hydrogen to helium fusion reaction gives off a huge amount of energy in the form of heat and light, right? So when a bomb goes off, that's an example. But really, when we're making hydrogen fuse in a hydrogen bomb, we're on a very small scale making something that the sun is doing on a very large scale. And why are we not destroyed by the sun doing it on a very large scale? Because we're how far from the sun? How many? 93 million. 93 million miles away from the sun. If we were close, it would destroy us. So the sun is a massive nuclear reactor, and as far as we can tell, science has shown that the main reaction occurring in our sun and in most stars is the hydrogen to helium fusion reaction giving off light and heat. And that's a good thing for us at that distance, right? So here's a hypothesis. Stars and galaxies formed by gravitational compaction of massive clouds of hydrogen. Do you see how the things that we know to be true and can observe to be true add up to this? That doesn't mean this is necessarily true. It could be that our star formed in a different way. And I'm not trying to make a commentary on how old the Earth is or how old the sun is, because you might say, well, if the universe is young, then it would have happened a different way, and that may be true. What I am saying is the things we know to be true make this a very reasonable scientific hypothesis, right? And even if you think it's not ultimately true, I happen to believe that it is true, it's reasonable. That's all I'm saying, yeah? Compare that. So these things that we know to be true justify this as a hypothesis, all right? And I contend that there is no such collection of things we know to be true that justify the main hypothesis of Darwinism. In other words, what we're saying for stars, based on everything we know, we reasonably conclude that stars and galaxies could have formed that way. Whereas here's the Darwinian hypothesis, that there was by some fluke of nature on this planet, a first primitive living cell formed, and Darwin didn't claim to explain that, and in fact, no scientists actually claim that they've explained it, but they've offered some hypotheses. Somehow a cell formed that was like a primitive bacterium, and after that, Darwin's evolutionary process, descent with modification, natural selection, and random mutation, supposedly, by the Darwinian story, produced all of life from that first start, okay? That's a big claim. And are we up there on that tree? Are we actually shown up there? Yeah. Yeah, there we are, okay? So we're up there. That includes us. We're part of the Darwinian story, okay? What I'm claiming is, and I've been doing this for a long time, what I'm claiming is there is no set of facts up here, the way there was for star and galaxy formation, that leads to this conclusion. Unguided natural processes, the blind watchmaker is what Dawkins called them, formed all of life. Now, there's all kinds of facts that evolutionary biologists have determined, and they are true, okay? But they don't add up to this, right? And likewise, there are a lot of other things that evolutionary biologists insist are true, but they aren't facts. And they might line up with this, and they might come from this, but they aren't facts, right? So I'm saying there's a disconnect between what we expect for a theory in astrophysics. We expect a hypothesis to have a very credible set of things that we know to be true that lead to that inference, and then you go and work upon that inference. And there is no such set of facts for this thesis, the idea that material processes produced us. There's no such set of facts. There's just preaching, basically. There's lots of facts, but they don't add up to this. Do you see the difference? Now, you could say, well, how do I know there isn't such a set? Well, I have put this to evolutionary biologists, and so far I basically challenged them If you think I'm wrong, give me the set of facts. And nobody has yet done it. I've got the latest, which I hope will be published this year. I put this challenge in a chapter that Lord willing, will be published in a Cambridge University Press volume. And I spelled it out very politely and said, I could be wrong. Someone show me what you think are the facts. And the reason I did that is I know they don't have them. But I want to show them so that I'm putting the challenge out there, right? And I know some heavy hitters in evolutionary biology. Nobody has attempted this. And I think they won't attempt it because it will be embarrassing if you do attempt it. Either you'll say a bunch of things that aren't true that add up to a materialist origin of humanity, or you'll say things that are true that don't add up to it. Do you see? You can go either way. You can give a bunch of other things that we can't validate that add up to it, but you can't give things that we can validate. All right. Let's look at, we're already through one way of dispensing with materialism. Let's look at two more this evening. The second one is that the materialist conception of humanity is incoherent. So this is a material thing. Anybody name some elements that are probably, what's the most prevalent element in this? Carbon. Name some other ones. What else? Carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, phosphorus, a little bit of sulfur, plutonium. No, there's no plutonium. Don't worry. So that is a material thing. It's made of physical stuff. It's made of stuff that's on the periodic table of the elements. Dawkins and probably Elon Musk and certainly Neil deGrasse Tyson think that we are physical things just as surely as this is. And you'd add a few elements, but it'd be basically carbon. We're mostly water and carbon compounds, right? That's what they would say. That's what a human is. I'm going to show you, well, first of all, wouldn't it be nice if we could, we all as Christians reject that, right? We don't think that humans are just carbon, nitrogen. We don't think we're just a collection of atoms, just a collection of cells. Wouldn't it be nice if you could show that? And I'm going to show you, we can show this. And we show it by showing that the claim we're trying to refute is incoherent, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to use this principle. It's called the fallacy of self-validation, and it goes like this. If the validity of X is in question, then X cannot provide the answer. Do you see that? So if we what's your name? Colson. Colson. Now you guys know Colson, you trust Colson, but suppose Colson just came in and was selling something, and nobody knew Colson, and we thought, is Colson honest or dishonest? Because that would be if Colson is saying, look, it's a good deal, man. I'm going to sell you my car out here. It's a good deal. Colson's saying that. Well, I want to know, well, is Colson honest or dishonest? So if the validity of Colson is in question, who can I not ask? Colson. Because if I say, are you telling me the truth? He says, yeah, it's a good car. Do you see how that doesn't work? If I don't know if Colson, and I think if I asked all these people, I think they would say you are, that you're a truth teller and not a distorter. But do you see how you can't go to the source in question to get an answer of the validity of the source, right? That's a very powerful principle. Okay, because if we ask about this, is human thought, humans go about their lives doing things that dogs don't do. We do a lot of things that dogs do, but dogs don't have a contemplative life. Did you ever think about that? Dogs don't sit around thinking, I was a little slow on the sit last time. I wonder what I could do. They don't do that, but we do that, right? Dogs don't lay awake at night thinking, I wonder what tomorrow, I wonder if I'm going to be a good dog. But we are contemplative creatures, right? God made us in his image to be that way. Did you ever pause, probably not, and that's okay, to ask whether human thought is at all valid? Like, what if we're just totally deceiving ourselves? And in fact, if Neil deGrasse Tyson is right, and you were programmed by some kid in a parent's basement who made up stuff, then is our thought valid? No, it's not valid. So there are these counter proposals that would make human thought not be valid. So if we ask, is it valid? Is it a valid project for humans to think? And here we're not saying, are all human thoughts correct? Or are all humans good thinkers? Or do all humans reason to the truth accurately? We're saying, is it a worthwhile endeavor for humans to try to think clearly and to try to get to the truth? Or is it a complete waste of time? I think we want to say it is a valid exercise. It's a worthwhile exercise. But if we go back to this principle, what cannot provide the answer? What can we not appeal to get the answer to the question, is it valid? Is human thought valid? We can't appeal to human thought. And we don't really have anything else we can appeal to, do we? So we can't actually, through human thought, show that it's valid for humans to think, right? And if you think that's depressing, I don't, because what that means is we have to start with faith, right? We have to start with a faith position that I think it is valid because I think God put us here and made us in his image. So let's start on faith and say, we're going to take it to be valid for humans to think. And once you think, you can go off and do things like science, because science requires thought. It requires more than just thought, though. What else does... There's another faith thing that science requires, because just as we can't appeal to human thought to validate human thought, we can't appeal to science to validate science, right? So is it valid for humans to do science? Well, if we've taken on faith that humans can think, that's important for doing science, but what else is important that we can't actually prove? There's something else very important. Science is thinking, but it's also what? It's observing, and it's observing the stuff that's out there, right? So if you are a character in a video game programmed by some kid in his parents' basement, then there is no science. Who made up the rules, right? The kid made up the rules of chemistry and physics and biology. There is no, because the kid could mess with the rules. There's no reason to think there's anything actually deep and true about science if deGrasse Tyson is right, and I don't think he's ever realized, oh, there goes physics. I don't think he's ever realized this. But there has to be a real and true and reliable outside world that has objective properties so that I can go and study them in my lab and shoot, I'll have your name tomorrow. Colson can go and study them in his lab and we get the same, or we can compare. And he says, no, I think you're off. And I go back, oh, this instrument wasn't calibrated right. And we start to agree. And then we publish papers. That's how you do science, is we think that humans can think, we hope they can, and we hope there really is this world that we think is out there, that is really an objective thing that has reliable properties that are discernible by humans and that they're consistent so that a scientist in South Africa and a scientist in Canada and a scientist at Hume Lake can all go and look at things and get results that harmonize. You can look at the stars here, you can look at the stars elsewhere, and you're going to see the same stars, right? But you can't prove that with science, so this is another thing you have to take to be true on faith. Do you see that? If the validity of X is in question, you can't appeal to X. A test tube cannot tell you whether test tubes exist, right? You have to assume they exist, right? By the way, people who study science never learn any of this. They just assume it and move on, right? But I'm telling you, this is important. Okay, and I'll show you why it's important. Okay, we've taken two things to be true on faith, that we actually take our existence to be true on faith, that we can think and that it's a valid exercise to think, not that we're always right, but it's worthwhile, and that there really is a world out there that we can study and hope to learn about and describe. Now we can go off and do science, and our goal in doing science is to come up with explanations of aspects of the natural world, right? Now, suppose there's a particular explanation that we go off and do science. Thousands of scientists are working in this area. We come up with something that we think is true. It gets published in papers. It gets written in textbooks. Students are learning about this. Say AP biology students are learning about this and being told that it's true. And suppose that this thing that you could consider to be a science thing, right, because it came out of the scientific community, suppose it has implications for our faith in human thought. And suppose the implications are negative, that if this thing my textbook is saying is true, then I don't have faith in human thought. If that were true, then it would invalidate the human thought project, it would invalidate science, and it would invalidate the explanation itself, because that's where it came from. This is sawing off the limb that you're sitting on. This is called a self-refuting claim, right? This is a self-refuting claim. If a claim says something and you take it to be true, if we provisionally take it to be true and then reason that, oh, the claim is false, then it's a self-refuting claim. Do you see that? I'm going to show you an example. But one simple example would be if I pound my fist on this table and say, nothing is certain. Do you see how that's a self-refuting? Because I'm acting like I know that nothing's certain, but I just said nothing is certain. So how do I know it? If you take it to be true, it shows it to be false. Do you see that? Okay, so here's our self-refuting claim. Believe it or not, the materialist claim about humanity is self-refuting. So if you take humans to be material things and nothing else, then when we think, what's doing our thinking? Where are chemicals? Chemicals in your foot? Brain. The brain is a physical organ, and your brain is doing your thinking. That's the materialist view of humanity. And if I had just started off by asking, do your brains think? Put up your hand if your brains think. Well, I think most of us would say yes. No, they don't. Put your hand down. Your mind thinks. Your brain does not think. And we're going to show the distinction. Okay? The mind is immaterial. The brain is material. So the organ, the gray matter, the neurons, that's material. That's the brain. And I'm going to show you how it's incoherent to say that your brain is thinking. Okay? Your brain is important for you to be able to think, but it's not doing the thinking. So to do this, let's imagine ourselves in a futuristic high-tech brain imaging lab. So you're sitting back comfortably in your chair, conscious, and the scientists in this brain imaging lab have little probes all over your scalp. And was that a shudder? Like, ooh, I don't want to be in that lab. It's not shocking. It's just probes all over your scalp. And let's say they have displays like this all over the room. And there's like a team of scientists in white lab coats. And they're all materialists. And so they all think you're nothing but chemicals. And these machines that they have connected to you and the displays can image anything in real time, anything and everything down to any resolution they want that's happening in your brain, right? So they can zoom in, show every neuron, show everything that's happening. You can't really do this, but suppose you could, okay? And these scientists who are materialists, and they think you are the sum total of you are a chemical package wrapped in skin, and everything about you is those chemicals doing what chemicals do. And they ask you to count and to think about numbers as you count. You're counting up to 10. You say, okay, 1, 2, stop. And they say, what's your name? Deacon. They say, Deacon. They say, you said the number 2. You said TWO, 2. And they capture this image, and it's got a red area in your frontal lobe, and they say, is that what you mean, Deacon, when you say 2? Do you mean a red activation center in the frontal lobe? And he says, no. And they get a little bit aggravated. They say, wait a minute, we're going to zoom in here. There's a particular synapse in your frontal lobe that fired when you said 2. And it's shown here, by the way, this is fictitious, but suppose they did. And they said, is that what you mean, Deacon, when you say 2? The firing of that particular synapse? No. You say, no. And they start to get aggravated because various scientists in the white lab coats are coming up with various angles and various, like, there's a calcium, there's a potassium potential across this membrane. Is that what you mean by 2? And you say, no, 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 no. And they get frustrated because what do you mean when you say 2? Let's put it this way. Is there anything in your brain that is precisely what you mean when you say 2? No. Because what do you mean? What's 2? What's a number? Okay. And a number is not a part of the brain, right? So there isn't anything they can show you. There isn't any physical thing they can show you where you go, yes, finally, that's what I mean when I say 2. Now, what if they put a circle around these 2 neurons and said 2, but but there's a distinction between saying, this isn't the meaning of two. This isn't what you mean when you use the word two. This is, there's some concept and you're applying that concept to these two neurons. Sure, two golf balls, two neurons, two stars. Sure, but that's not two itself. Because if that were two itself and they ablated these two neurons, then two's gone. There is no two. And there is no physical thing that you could destroy and destroy two. It's just not physical. Okay? And you have that conversation with them, and they get more and more angry because they say this is a physical world. And if they say this is a physical world, so if what you're referring to, if you're meaning, what you're meaning when you use these words isn't physical, then it doesn't exist. You're confused. Right? And you say, whoa. If I'm confused, then every word I'm using, the meaning is not physical. I'm referring to concepts. And if you're saying I'm wrong, then you're saying I'm deeply confused. Like I'm nuts. Do you get that? If the meaning of every word you're using, if what you intend to be talking about doesn't exist and you're actually confused and it's all crackling of neurons, then you're deeply confused. Do you get that? And if you're deeply confused, what does that mean for your faith in human thought? It's gone. It's gone. If I follow the materialist by doubting my conscious experience, I'm forced to doubt absolutely everything. Why? Because I don't have access to anything except through my conscious experience, right? Okay? So if in this argument, Deacon sticks to his guns and says, no, I'm referring to concepts, and you're not going to find a concept in my brain because brain's material and concepts are immaterial. And they say, you're wrong. There isn't anything immaterial. It's a material universe, and all that exists, the sum total of all that exists is the material universe. Then you would say, well, if I go in the direction of saying that you're right about that, then I'm nuts because I think I'm doing things when I think, and I can't be doing them if you're right, okay? But if I'm nuts, then you don't exist, and neurons don't exist, and science doesn't exist. It's all a nightmare, right? Do you see how it all implodes? Either A, I am manipulating concepts when I think, and concepts are not material things, or I am being manipulated by neurons, tricked into thinking I'm manipulating concepts. Do you see? One of these is a positive view of manipulation. I'm working with concepts when I think. I'm fashioning ideas when I think. Either that's true, or negative sense of manipulation. I'm being duped, tricked by something happening in my brain, and I'm getting the impression that I'm manipulating concepts. I'm getting the impression I'm doing stuff that I'm not actually doing. But if B is true, it self-destructs, right? Because I'm nuts. If B is true, this is all gone. I have no faith in thought if you're telling me I'm wrong about everything I'm thinking. Why would I have faith? I can't have faith in thought. If I'm wrong about everything, then it's all gone, including neurons, including this lab, including you, including the claim that brains think. Brains don't exist. If I don't have a place to get started thinking, then why would I think that brains exist? Okay? It's all craziness. Do you see that? Okay. So that means you have to reject the incoherent worldview, which is the materialist worldview, and you embrace the worldview. No. I know why you guys are materialists. You were trained to think this way, but you're wrong. Because thought cannot be, there's no coherent understanding of what thought is that reduces it to material stuff. It has to be up here. It has to be ideas, okay? And they're not material. They refuse to be material. Okay, so that leads us, so they take off their white lab coats and Deacon leads them into another room and he says, I'm going to tell you the way it really is. Here's the way it really is. We're not denying, as Christians, are we denying that we have physical bodies? No. God is the God of the physical universe. He's the God who created everything, including our immaterial mind, soul, spirit that he knit to a physical body, and he intends for us to be that way. Humans are immaterial mind, soul, spirit, knit to physical bodies, and both are good. Your mind, soul, spirit is good. Your body is good. Your body's physical. Your mind is not physical. So a human, this is just a diagram that there's kind of this material realm, which is the physical stuff, and the stool and the computer and the post and the speakers and the cars. All of them are here, the physical stuff. But there's also this realm that in a human, not in a car, not in a post, because we don't think this has a mind, right? I don't think it has a mind. We don't think the podium has a mind, but you do and I do. And that's this immaterial thing that works with immaterial things. And by God's design of us, it interfaces with a physical body, and the brain, without doubt, is the organ where this interface happens, okay? Without doubt. So tell me, is there anything you can do that will affect your brain, and that's physical? Is there anything physical that could happen to the brain that will affect your ability to think? Drugs. Or alcohol, okay? If alcohol is, we could write this formula, it's 2 carbons, it's ethanol, right? Ethyl alcohol. If the level gets high enough, nobody can think straight if they're drunk, right? If they're plastered, nobody thinks straight. So that's a physical effect on a physical organ, and it's affecting the way I think. Well, what's happening there? The brain is the organ, by God's design, that acts in service of the mind. And so if the brain's not in a healthy state, the mind is going to be affected, right? And does it work the other way too? Does the mind do things that get pushed into the brain and action? If you raise your hand, your thought, hand go up, right? And hand went up. Well, do you know how to control a brain? I don't know how to control a brain. I have no idea what happened. When I go hand goes up, I just think hand go up, hand went up, all right? That's the way it works for us. But someone has to know that was your thought, and someone has to take that thought and push it into the motor cortex and work it through as a physical thing so that the muscles get activated and your hand goes up. Who's that? That has to be God. It has to be the one who reigns over this realm and knows your thoughts before you think them. So God has to be a part right here, right now. Has to be right here, right now, a part of what allows a human to be a human, right? So if you ever, and we all do, King David did, you ever have those moments when you feel like God's far away, like he's not there, what could you do to prove to yourself that actually he's right here? Think, but something more. So if you just think, then I could think, well, like move your pen the way you just did, right? Because you can't move your brain, but God can, and God knows you just chose to do that. So that proves, if you raise your hand, that proves that God is right here, right now. Do you get that? And that's pretty important, pretty profound. Were you raising your hand for a question or just proving that God is here? Thank you. Yes, God is here right now. No, go ahead.
Well, okay, so I think I just got lost when you were explaining that, if I'm being honest.
Wait, about which part?
Just how...
When I was showing my family, slide of my family? No.
No, I mean, yeah, I think I started losing after that. But how raising your hand...
Oh, yes, okay. So when I say I don't know how to work a brain, I think that's true of you too. All I know is what it feels like to say hand go up, right? And if you're playing, suppose we're throwing a baseball or we're playing a game, we're throwing a frisbee. It all becomes so natural that you think of it as I'm making my hand go up. Well, in a sense you are, but really all you're doing is as this mind, you're saying hand go up and hand goes up. For a quadriplegic, they still have the mental, they can still say hand go up, but the hand doesn't go up, okay? So what a human could do is just have that thought, hand go up. The rest is God communicating that, knowing that thought, pushing it into your motor cortex. The neurons do their stuff. It becomes a signal that goes down the spinal cord, goes to the nerves that control the muscles, and the hand goes up, okay? But you can't do that because thoughts don't move protons and electrons and neutrons, do they? Thoughts don't move them. Physics, 5 forces. There's 5 forces that move protons, electrons and neutrons. What are they? Or 4, depending on how you count them. There's 5, you call it 4 or 5 fundamental forces in physics, and that's it. Everything physical that gets moved in these 4 ways. Gravity. You could put that in 1 or 2. You could do electricity, magnetism, or electromagnetism, so they're actually closely related. 2 more.
Does electrons and protons count? No.
That's electric. So think Oppenheimer, think.
Nuclear.
Yeah, strong and weak nuclear. Strong, weak nuclear. Strong, weak nuclear, electricity, magnetism, and gravity. That's it. Physical stuff moves by those things. Me thinking isn't any of those things. Me thinking, hey, let's get up and, go get a drink. That's not any of those things. But those things have to be there for physical stuff to start moving, okay? And whoever makes this connection has to both be able to move electrons and protons and neutrons and know what you're thinking about. And that's God. There's nobody else. That's not anyone else's job description. So, does that make more sense? So if I raise my hand, I'm proving God is here. He knows what I'm intending. He knew my thought. I didn't articulate it. But even if I did, when we speak, I'm thinking thoughts. It only becomes speech because it goes into the brain, goes to speech centers, makes my mouth move, makes the vocal cords get controlled. God has to be doing this handshake between the 2 realms. Okay? And that's a very profound realization. Third, last but not least, the raw improbability of life by blind chances makes all such accounts implausible. Now, we're going to look tomorrow at another way to do this, where we actually look at the complexity of biology, but I'm not going to wow you with the complexity of biology right now. I'm just going to do some archery, because we probably have archery here at Hume, right? I'm sure we do. So this is a Hume-themed argument. What this is a very simple probabilistic argument that I actually gave. I've been involved in intelligent design from the beginning of the modern sort of ID movement. So people like Bill Dembski and Mike Behe, Steve Meyer. These are people that have been my close colleagues for a long, long time. And Bill Dembski, who's a mathematician with 2 PhDs, kind of devoted his career to a theory or a theorem called the conservation of information. And he's a mathematician. So his idea is, if you can prove that information has a conservation law like energy and momentum in physics, then for a complex life to appear would require an information source. And that's what Darwinism doesn't have, right? So the only way you could get complex life, if information is conserved, is if there's an intelligence that puts in the information, right? That's the only way. That is now he's now proven it. It's now proven. It was just published last year, okay? And it got published he worked on this for decades and has various parts of it, but he clinched it after a meeting where he and I were at the Evangelical Philosophical Society meeting in San Diego, November 2024. And I gave this simple probabilistic argument I'm going to give to you. And he was taking down notes, and about a month and a half later, he sent a manuscript to me and said, I was taking notes when you said that. I think that clinches the theory here. And that is now a peer-reviewed published paper on the conservation of information. Here's basically, in a nutshell, what I gave at that meeting that became this. And this will be a little bit of probability, and I know most people don't study, yes?
What was it that you said? Complex life can only be preserved by what?
He did this in terms of information. And so if information is conserved, that means you can't just have information just come from nowhere. It has to come from a source, right? Like energy. Energy can't come from nowhere. It has to come from an energy source. And so if it's true that information is conserved, and that's now been proven, then complex living things, not just humans, but mushrooms and oak trees and everything that's complex, squirrels, they can only have come about if if an intelligence put the information in them, they can't have come from nothing. Yeah, so it's a disproof of the Darwinian view of life. So what I want to show you here is something that Richard Dawkins, so he's the guy who was interviewed, that first video we looked at, who said that you are a throwaway survival machine. He wrote this in what I consider to be his best book. His thesis is totally wrong, but it's good writing and it's engaging. He said, however many ways there may be of being alive, it's certain that there are vastly more ways of being dead, or rather not alive. You may throw cells together at random over and over again for 1 billion years, and not once will you get a conglomeration that flies or swims or burrows or runs or does anything, even badly, that could remotely be construed as working to keep itself alive. So what he said here, you might say, that's Dawkins? Yes, because he's saying living things require extraordinary arrangements of material stuff. It's chemistry, but it's extraordinary chemistry. It's physics, but it's extraordinary physics. And he thinks that you don't need God to get these extraordinary configurations because of natural selection. So the key word for him is random. He's saying natural selection doesn't throw things together at random. It's a non-random process, and that's how you get these extraordinary configurations. But this is false. All you need to do to show that he's wrong is take his observation that they're extraordinarily unusual, extraordinarily rare combinations of things that allow something to be alive. And it goes like this. First, I want to give you just a basic primer on probability. Probabilities are numbers that range from 0 to 1 that represent likelihoods. So 0 means impossible. If the probability of something is 0, then it can't happen. Probability 1 means it's certain. It can't not happen. And most probabilities that you work with are in between the two, but those are the two limiting cases. The notation, I'll show you some other notation here. So when we're working with probabilities, use P means a probability, and the things in paren mean the probability of this, and there's usually some sort of notation. So let's say this, the probability that a person avoids social media, so the probability of that, is approximately 0.3. So that means 30% of the population wants nothing to do or has nothing to do with social media. Okay, now let me introduce another part of probability notation, and that's this vertical line here. So this is called a conditioned or a conditional probability. So probability that someone avoids social media given that they are a student, and what have I said? That's much lower than 0.3. So students, only a tenth, I'm guessing numbers here, say 0.1% avoid social media. Do you see how the given changes the number? If you just say people in general, the probability is 0.3. If you say avoiding social media given that they're a student, now it's lower because most students are involved in social media. And as a third example, P avoids social media given Joshua Wilderness Institute student is 1. Now it's certain that they avoid social media. Do you see how the condition makes the number change, right? Okay, so this is just standard probability notation. Okay, so here's another just basic truth about conditional probability. So don't worry about what the A and the B are, but PA given B, probability of A given that B is true, probability of A being true given that B is true, is some probability. If you multiply that by the probability of B being true, then that's just the same as the probability of A and B. It's called the joint probability. And sometimes you use an upside down U, but I'm just going to use an and to make it clear. So PA given B times PB is the very same thing as PA and B, the two both being true. And that kind of makes sense. Probability of something given something is one thing, and then if you give it, it's going to be the probability of it being given is going to be the probability of that thing. So you multiply the two, you get the probability of the joint occurrence. Okay? So here's the example I gave in San Diego. Consider a lifeless Earth-like planet somewhere out there in the far-flung universe. Okay? Question. How likely is it that physical processes operating on that planet would produce a stone whose surface has letter-shaped indentations that form a coherent text hundreds of words long. And we don't need a number here, but so P, physical text, a lifeless planet that has Earth-like geology to it. So it has stones, it has water, things like that. What's your sense of this probability? So it wouldn't be, we probably wouldn't say it's exactly 0, because that would mean it's absolutely impossible. But we say it's so close to 0 that it's not worth arguing about how it's going to be so many zeros before you get to anything that it's actually not worth arguing. Yeah, I'll get to that. Okay, so this is where you're seeing where I'm going here. So everyone would say, and you can actually show this, because you could say, well, let's look at some stone that's only been touched by physical processes and see if you find anything that looks like a letter or anything that's repeated like a letter. And you would have to look at, hundreds of square meters of stone. And you say, well, we don't see anything that looks like 2 characters. Then to get a long text, you could multiply the math and say, it's not going to happen. The probability is going to be very, very low. So let's just say this. The likelihood is so low that we rightly consider it to be impossible, okay? We don't think there's any Earth-like planet that's going to have a text on stone that happened by physics, just doing physical processes, just doing what physical processes do. Do we agree with that? And I think even Richard Dawkins would agree with that. And that's where he would get in trouble. Because we would say, so here, phys text means a physically produced text, according to what we've said here, and this means approximately 0. It's so close to 0 that we're not going to quibble about how it differs from 0. Okay, and yet, here is a stone for which proponents of materialism give precisely this impossible explanation. Okay, this is the Gettysburg Address, the Lincoln Memorial, and you're saying, what? Wait a minute. Lifeless Earth, which is a very Earth-like planet, through physical processes became Earth with life. Through physical processes became Earth with intelligent life. Through physical processes produced this stone. Okay? So if you're a materialist, then you think, gulp, it happened. It happened through physics, right? And we say, no, it's not physics. But I'm saying if you're a materialist, gulp, the thing that you said is probability 0 actually happened. Okay, so here's the common interpretation. This is what Richard Dawkins would say. With the natural evolution of humans, what was otherwise an impossible outcome became a likely outcome. Okay, so that's what you're saying. Well, you're actually saying something higher than that, I think. But yeah. What's your name? Luke. Yeah, you're saying that to get humans is like far beyond to get writing, right? Yes, I agree. Luke Wyatt, right? Yeah. Okay. I could just tell. You seem like a Wyatt. Okay, so this... This is what I think an evolution would say. Well, they say, okay, sure, yeah. But once intelligent life evolves, then it's virtually certain that you'll get intelligent life will have language, they'll make written language, they'll scrawl things on stone, okay? So, slam dunk. Okay, so they'll say this. Probability of a physically produced text given human evolution is close to certainty. It's close to 1, right? If you get intelligent life, you're going to get language, you're going to get written language, you're going to get people scratching stuff on stones. And what they would say is, this high probability trumps the low probability. Do you see that? That would be your typical evolutionary argument. And it's wrong. Okay? And I'm going to show you that it's wrong. I'm going to use, I feel like this could just dump my computer if I'm not careful. We're going to use, what are the odds? So, I don't know if you use hay bales. Have you done archery here? I don't know if you use hay bales, but that's a common thing is you have a target on a hay bale. But we're going to do this a little bit more tricky. We're going to have a hay bale that could be anywhere up to like, say, 200 meters away from the archer, and everyone's cleared away for safety. And the archer does not know whether it's 2 meters away or 200 meters away and has no idea what direction, and the archer is blindfolded and spun around and takes a shot, okay? And the target could be anywhere in this vast field. What's the likelihood of hitting the bullseye? Again, we don't want to put a number on it, but it's very close to 0. So we'd say P blind hit is roughly 0, right? It's just not going to happen. Even if you had your eyes open, for most of us, it's not going to happen, right? Let's be honest. No. Okay. But how about this? We say, well, sure, blindfolded, it's not likely to hit, but what if there were a very helpful wind that takes the arrow, however it was shot, like it may be way off, and directs it to the bullseye. Okay. If that's what we mean by helpful wind, a wind that's as strong as it needs to be and is directed in the way it needs to be to take the arrow to the bullseye. Now, do you agree that the conditional probability is roughly 1, right? The probability of a blind hit given that kind of wind is 1, close to 1, right? Yes? Okay. All right. But look, this requires more than just hitting a small target by chance. It also requires a very strange kind of wind, right? So this is far, far less likely than just happening to hit the bullseye. Do you see that? Because not only did you hit the bullseye, but something really weird just happened, like a half tornado that stopped, and then something really weird had to happen here, okay? So you can actually show this. Here's what the math looks like. P blind hit given helpful wind times P helpful wind is the joint probability. Probability of blind hit and helpful wind. And guess what? Probability of blind hit and helpful wind, is that higher or lower than just probability of blind hit? Much lower, because you still got the blind hit and you got something really weird happening with the weather, okay? Much, much lower, okay? So P blind hit given helpful hit times P helpful wind is much less than P blind hit, right? And we know that this is close to 1. We just said it was. And we know that this is close to 0. That's what we started with. So what does that mean this is? 0. It means the math of probability means you won't get that helpful wind by chance. If we're talking about blind occurrences here, we've just proven you won't get that wind. It's a proof, okay? So, in other words, P helpful wind is 0, right? Close to 0. And that means P blind hit being 0, actually it's the other way around. The Darwinist thinks this trumps that. It's the other way around. That trumps this, right? Okay? The raw improbability trumps the conditional, okay? And that means the probability of a physical process producing a text being 0 trumps the probability of physical text given human evolution is 1. And what does that mean? It means the probability of human evolution is 0. It means the probability of human evolution is 0. Do you see this? Yeah? Okay? It's the other way around. The trumping is the other way around. So, probability of life by accident being close to 0 trumps probability of life by accident given helpful selection, because it shows, although this is 1, what's this? 0. It shows that that's 0, right? So this is now, Dembski took this and has framed it out in the rigorous math, and it's now become part of his proof of the conservation of information. So the correct interpretation is not the Darwinian one that, oh, well, all you have to do is evolve intelligent life and then you can get the letters on the stone. The correct interpretation is the special conditions needed for an outcome that is beyond the reach of chance to become probable are themselves beyond the reach of chance, right? If we're talking about just natural processes, the special assumptions you would have to make in order for something that's beyond the reach of chance to become probable, those conditions have to themselves be improbable. There's no other way around this, right? And so if I'm going to take this in the direction just leading to AI in the bigger conversation, because A guy named Daniel Dennett, atheist, talked about Darwin's theory being an inverted pyramid. That he said traditionally we thought that God was above everything. God created mind, design. He made order out of chaos, and he could grab nothingness, speak things into existence, but God's on top of it all. But with Darwinism, it's the other way around. You start with nothingness and the small things, and it evolves into the big things, evolves into complex life. Complex life invents God, okay? So that's the bottom up. So the thing is, it's false. It's a lie. This is a top-down universe. Marvelous things happen and marvelous creatures exist, and you're among them because someone more marvelous exists and someone more marvelous made us. Are we intelligent? Are we clever? Yes. We exist only because someone more intelligent and more clever made us, okay? So the inversion of this pyramid is a lie. It's pure lie. Here's the lie. That matter, that's just atoms and molecules in motion, made us. And if you believe that the little things can make the big things bottom up, then why would you not believe that we can make an AI that's superior to humans? Have you heard talk of that? Why would you not believe that? If little things make big things bottom up, why wouldn't we be able to make something that's better than us, superior to us? But that's a lie. It's not true. This is the truth. God is supreme above everything. He made us. We make our little robots in our AI. And just as we can never be God's equal, can a robot or an AI ever be our equal? No, because they're the works of our fingers. The works of our fingers will never be us, will never match us, right? It's actually blasphemy to think. The version of this pyramid is actually blasphemous because it says the little things are better than God, are bigger than God. Scripture disagrees with that. The rock is very clear. The rock, his work is perfect, for all his ways are justice. A God of faithfulness and without iniquity, just and upright is he. They have dealt corruptly with him. They are no longer his children because they are blemished. They are a crooked and twisted generation. Do you thus repay the Lord, you foolish and senseless people? Is not he your Father who created you, who made you and established you? Okay? The Creator is always above the created. The Creator is always above the creature. And that means what we create is always below us, right? One more and then I'm done. Romans 9, 20 and 21. But who are you, O man, to answer back to God? Will what is molded, the created thing, say to its molder, why have you made me like this? Has the potter no right over the clay to make out of the same lump one vessel for honorable use and another for dishonorable use? You're the made thing. You don't put yourself above the maker. And this isn't talking about AI, but that's a universal principle. It's true, true, true. We are creators who are inferior to our Creator, and the things we create will always be inferior to us. Okay, and that becomes important in an age where people are saying that AIs will outstrip us and become our superiors. They won't. They can't. But we'll talk more about that. Thank you very much for your attention. And that's it for this evening.